Hey guys, what's up? It's Drew here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a build, and this is for the Titan code of the Devastator, the new Hammer Titan skill tree. This is probably one of the most fun builds I've used in all of Destiny, and has quickly become one of my favorites and one of my main classes that I enjoy playing. So firstly, the objective of this build is to throwing hammer everything, kill everything with your throwing hammer, and chain those throwing hammer kills to get one-hit throwing hammers, massive damage, and as a result, the ability to win individual engagements really quickly and run through enemy teams. Chaining throwing hammer and melee kills, like I said, will give you one-hit throwing hammers, and when you pick up your throwing hammer after ideally getting a one-shot throwing hammer kill, you'll get your health back to continually one-shot enemies and just plow through individual engagements. For my stat split, I went for either 661, 652, or 742. That's in the order of mobility, resilience, and recovery. I opted in for high mobility and enough resilience to counter most common meta weapons like 180 hand cannons, aggressive burst pulses, and the ace of spades. Recovery I found wasn't quite as important with this build, just because picking up your hammer after landing a hit, even if it's not a one hit, triggers your health regen when you pick up your hammer. So when you get the hang of the throwing hammer and become consistent with it, you get health regen pretty regularly. For my mods, I went all in with melee cooldown, so that's 5 melee cooldowns, and that gives me a 33-second throwing hammer cooldown in the event that I wasn't able to retrieve my hammer to immediately replenish the charge. Of course, because you can retrieve your throwing hammer, you can argue that you might want to put some mods towards other things. Perhaps you want to run 3 melee mods for a 43-second cooldown, and 2 mods to put towards some additional stats or another cooldown, like a class ability cooldown. To me personally, I think the throwing hammer is pretty essential to this class's success. It kind of revolves around it, so I want it as frequently and as often as possible. For some small additional perks, I used the hands-on perk on my helmet to gain additional super energy from my melee or throwing hammer kills, and I used the outreach perk on my boots to reduce my throwing hammer cooldown even further whenever I use my barricade. As for weapons, I typically used a hand cannon or sidearm with this setup. Usually you'll want to be in mid-range to use the throwing hammer reliably, and that's where a hand cannon or sidearm would excel. So I found that a hand cannon could combo for 1 to 2 shots and a throwing hammer for a kill, with a shotgun for backup perhaps, or even a sidearm for a few shots and the follow-up of the throwing hammer while sniping. But more about this shortly. Let's talk about how the throwing hammers and roaring flames buff work. So essentially the throwing hammer does 100 damage on impact, which is the default melee damage. Normally it would take 2 of these to get a kill, so it's literally just a ranged melee attack. However, the roaring flames buff activates every time you get a solar ability kill and increases your damage for 15 seconds, and it can stack up to 3 times. The throwing hammer combined with 1 stack of roaring flames does 111 damage, with 2 stacks deals 122 damage, and with 3 stacks deals 134 damage. Just to mention as well, Roaring Flames did not affect my normal melee damage as far as I could tell. After throwing your hammer, it'll stay on the ground for roughly 7 seconds where you can pick it up, but if you don't pick it up, it'll explode and also deal damage when it explodes. And it seems to me like it maintains something in and around full damage. In a game of Rumble, I actually gained a 2 stack of Burning Fists and 1 stack of Roaring Flames, so that was 1 melee kill and 1 hammer throw kill. And I'd killed 2 people with that. My hammer was left on the floor in a doorway, and it seems like even after I died and after the Burning Fists would have ended or the buff would have gone away, the hammer still maintained the full buff damage, 309, and exploded to kill the person in 1 shot that was walking over it. I found the best weapons to combo with this loadout with the throwing hammer were the ones that let you get 1 headshot and then a throwing hammer kill to follow up. Using a basic aggressive hand cannon dealing 91 critical damage, you could kill with a throwing hammer follow-up at 5 resilience and 6 resilience would block it. With Ace of Spades and Memento Mori with 93 critical damage, you can follow up to kill with a throwing hammer at 7 resilience but 8 resilience would block it. With Sturm's energy weapon kill bonus dealing 95 critical damage, you can follow up with the throwing hammer to get a kill at 8 resilience, but 9 resilience will block it. 2 bursts from an aggressive burst sidearm like Smuggler's Word or Death by Scorn will also allow you to follow up with a throwing hammer to get a kill. I tried using this loadout with Luna's Hallow or Not Forgotten, and it's still good, however it takes 1 crit, 1 body to kill with a follow-up throwing hammer, so it's only useful in the scenario where you've hit a headshot but failed to follow up with another headshot for a potential 3-tap, failing to activate the Magnificent Howl perk. I do think that the throwing hammers work best with weapons that you can just 1-tap and follow up with a throwing hammer for a kill, But of course, you're not limited to that, and this is just a general damage guideline for the type of damage that you'll want to be doing to follow up and get a kill with a throwing hammer. In terms of the magnetism on the hammer and aiming the hammer, it actually seemed like the hammer throw was relatively forgiving. It barely required any sort of compensation for the hammer projectile dropping. You can really just throw it at a target or aim at a target and throw it, and it seems to lock on, usually resulting in a hit. You don't really have to worry about the curve or the drop of the hammer. It also seemed like the further the distance away from a target that you threw a hammer at it, the more magnetism or maybe some sort of acceleration kinda it would gain. Against moving targets though, I tried to land the hammer by predicting the time it would take to be on target, so carefully trying to place the hammer in front of a target, and it actually wasn't very effective at reliably landing or even triggering any sort of tracking or magnetism. Instead, I simply looked far forward, like more than I would have thought I would need to, ahead of where a target was moving, and it would regularly induce the tracking noticeably and land a hit. So let's talk about the Worm God Caress and its perk Burning Fists and how it really makes this build incredible. With Burning Fists, melee kills increase melee damage for 5 seconds, and additional melee kills reset the 5-second timer and increase melee damage further up until 5 stacks. Now, it does have 5 stacks, but I only analyzed 3 stacks. I think that's the most important, and you'll see that it kills pretty much anything at 3 stacks anyways. So, of course, with a normal melee, you'll deal 100 damage per melee, so it'll take 2 melees to kill a target. After getting that and activating 1 stack, you'll be able to do 185 damage to the next target. And after getting a kill with that, you'll be able to do 270 damage, so yes, a 1 melee kill on a target with 2 stacks. And then for 3 stacks, you'll be able to deal 490 damage to a target. So just to clarify, it'll take 2 melee kills to be able to 1 melee the next enemy. But now let's take a look how this stacks with the throwing hammer with the Roaring Flames active. As I mentioned earlier, the throwing hammer is no different than a normal melee. It deals 100 damage per hit. But if you were to get 1 kill with a throwing hammer and activate Roaring Flames for 15 seconds, but have 5 seconds where it's stacked with the Worm God Caress Burning Fists, then you have a hammer that can deal 205 damage, enough to one-shot up until 8 resilience. So after killing 1 enemy with a throwing hammer, you'll have a one-shot throwing hammer. And of course, this persists to the 2-time stack, which will deal 329 damage, and a 3-time stack, which will deal 657 damage. What's interesting though, is you can actually get 1 normal melee and 2 throwing hammer kills, so essentially a 2-stack of Roaring Flames and a 3-stack of the Burning Fists, to be able to kill a super in 1 throwing hammer. Yes, this includes things like Spectral Blades, Arc Strider, and even Nova Warp. So like I said at the beginning, throwing hammer everything with this class. And if you can keep going, if you can keep your chain going and your momentum going, you can pretty much just say screw you to anything that might try and stop you in the game. Which to me is pretty insane and a lot of fun, but what I really love is that it takes something that's really hard to do. So starting up your throwing hammer combo, being aware for that 5-second window that you have and getting another one shot within that period and continuously doing that, it recognizes that and basically gives you this tool that can just plow through anything and kill anything. And that's so rewarding. I love it so much. Again, this is undoubtedly one of my favorite classes to play in the game now, period, and I'd consider it a main class of mine. I never thought I'd say I'd main Titan. It's just way too much fun not to. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this build and you tried it out for yourself. It is so much fun. I cannot stress it enough. Please try it out. And if you try it out and happen to hit any crazy clips, then tweet them at me at Drewski's channel on Twitter. I'll put it in the description as well. I'd love to see them. Anyways, like I said, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the build. Hope you have fun trying it out. And as always, it's been Drew here today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys later.